champions, Indianapolis Colts.
This is the Indianapolis Colts Journey to the Super Bowl podcast, episode 4, and I'm your host, Dakota Lee Tracy Bernard Burrows. We got an exciting and action-packed show today, but before we get into that, I would like you to hit that subscribe button so you can't miss another episode. There's nothing more sweeter than a victory, except for beating a division rival on the road. I think the only thing sweeter than beating the Tennessee Titans is beating the Houston Texans, which came out on top this week against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Props to them. They won by 1 point. But we are still the number 1 in the AFC South, and this is the reason why. We beat a division rival that was 1-0. I give you that we lost a conference game, and the Texans beat a division rival, which is in the same conference, but that division rival did not have a winning record, and that is why we are on top. We won this week without the likes of Jabal Sheard and Kemoko Turay, but we still had a pretty good defensive stand, only allowing 17 points this week, and getting to the quarterback for 4 sacks. Danico Autry had 2. We also limited Derrick Henry to only 81 yards. Again, I think he's overrated because his size is what makes him so good. It's hard for people to tackle him. He should be getting more yards a game than he does. But regardless, he's a big guy. It's hard for people to tackle him, and we were able to limit him to 81 yards, even though that is still a pretty good game. In week 1, the Tennessee Titans rookie A.J. Brown had 100 yards and 3 receptions. This week, he had 3 receptions, but 25 yards. I feel like we contained him enough for him to not get a big game like he did in week 1. Our secondary really did step up this week. It also helped the fact that our defensive line was getting to the quarterback just as well as they did last week, even without Kemoko Turay in there. Danico Autry had a great game. He had 2 sacks and a forced fumble. The Titans missed a field goal, and I believe we might have tipped it, but I'm not too sure. They didn't say anything about that during the game, and while I watched the highlights, it was really hard to tell. And if we did tip the ball, I think it might have been Autry. He did it last year, and I don't believe his position changed on the special teams. I think this week I saw a little bit more of Khari Willis. He was our 4th round draft pick this year. I think he's outshining our number 1 draft pick so far. He has 9 tackles, while Rock Ya-Sin has 4. It's still the beginning of the year, so these guys could still have a lot in store for us all. Offensively, we did really well. Jacoby threw a pick, but I think that helps build his confidence moving forward. So his first interception's out of the way, and he won't have to worry about it. He also fumbled the ball, but I don't think that was a fumble. His entire arm was moving forward. It slipped out of his hands, and I understand that part. That still doesn't change the fact that his arm was moving forward. I really like the way he handled himself in those situations. That's a sign of a really good leader. He just shook it off, came back out, and helped us win the game. Deon Cain would have had a monster reception. Heck, he could have even scored if it wasn't for the pass interference. But if you give him another chance, hopefully he'll take that opportunity and run with it. Coach Reich did open up the playbook a little bit more for Jacoby, but I don't think he opened it up enough. But just like last week, we passed the ball just as much as we ran. This week, Jordan Wilkins got to run the ball a couple times. And he didn't disappoint. He ended the game with 82 yards. And Mack ended with 51 yards. I'm still blown away that we haven't split the carries. I don't really care if it's Hines or Wilkins, but I think we could have a really dominant running game if we split the carries a little more. Jacoby didn't have the greatest game, but he was able to finish it, and that's what we need. He passed for only 146 yards. However, he did have 3 touchdowns, and that is great for any quarterback. He also tried to extend plays, and I really enjoyed that. He got away from sacks the way Eli Manning did in the Super Bowl, but he did it multiple times. He showed all of us that he really wants to win. He might have threw an interception, but he still made really good choices passing the ball. Logan Ryan is one of the top defensive backs in the league, so it wasn't like he was getting picked by a nobody. Malcolm Butler and Logan Ryan both played in New England with Jacoby, so they knew Jacoby really well. Adam Vinatieri did miss 2 extra points this week, and he gave reporters hints that he may be retiring. I don't think he's going to retire until the end of the season, but if he does retire during the season, then it's probably because he can't get on track. Remember, he's 46 years old, and you can't kick forever. If we're going to talk about replacements, it's going to be really hard to replace one of the greatest of all time at his position. There are kickers that are not on a team right now that are good. There's this kicker that caught my eye on Twitter. His name's Jimmy Camacho. This guy went to Fresno State. I don't know much about this guy, but what I have researched, he played like 2 years in college. And the first year he didn't didn't play a lot. In 2017, he had a 97 extra point percentage and a 78 field goal percentage. Camacho is in a league called the IFL, the Inside Football League. It's basically arena football. And he led the entire league in points at 121. If you want to compare this guy to Adam Vinatieri scored 113 points last year. And I understand this is the NFL, not the IFL. It's a completely different league. But I really think Jimmy Camacho could be the guy to go get when and if Adam Vinatieri wants to retire. That's my input on this situation. I do hope he gets it all together, though. This week in the AFC South, the Houston Texans will be facing the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, the Texans are a pretty good team. Defensively, they're not as good as they used to be. In week 1, the Texans allowed Alvin Kamara to rush for 97 yards and 13 carries. I'm not sure how many times Latavius Murray ran the ball, but he rushed for another 43 yards. This week, they're going to be playing against another good rushing attack with Austin Eckler and Justin Jackson. In week 1, they also allowed Ted Ginn Jr. and Michael Thomas to receive over 100 plus yards. That makes me believe that their secondary has collapsed since the Honey Badger left. Last week, they also allowed over 100 yards rushing between the second string quarterback Minshew, if I'm saying that right, and Leonard Fournette. This is an improvement from week 1, but they allowed Chris Conley to have over 70 plus yards, and they allowed DJ Chalk to have over 50 plus yards receiving. This week, they will be playing against a really good receiver group. Leading the group will be Keenan Allen and Travis Benjamin. They also have Mike Williams, so it's going to be very tough for the Texans defense to hold those guys down. And then this week on Thursday Night Football, we got trash can versus trash can. The Jaguars versus the Tennessee Titans, and I don't really know what to say about that. Let's hope the Jaguars pull off the win, their first win of the year, and ultimately I believe the Jaguars have a way better team than the Titans if the Jaguars players can play together. But one of the top defensive backs in the league has requested a trade, and he may no longer be in the South anymore. There's fans asking, why don't we go trade for him? Well, for one, the Jaguars would be stupid to trade him inside the South. 2, and to me, he seems like one of those guys that causes locker room issues, so I would rather him not come to Indy. But also understand that whoever the Jaguars trade Ramsay for, or what they trade him for, it's going to be a good trade. Heck, they could trade Jalen Ramsay for Michael Thomas or Brandon Cooks. I would not like to see that. I would not like any of those guys in the AFC South because they're really good players. Whoever they trade Jalen Ramsay for or what they trade him for, it's going to be a good trade because Jalen Ramsay is a very good trade bait. It doesn't even matter if he has locker room issues. This week's our home opener in Lucas Oil Stadium, so hopefully the entire stadium will be rocking the entire game. We're playing the Atlanta Falcons, a team that got killed in week 1, but week 2 came out with a victory over the Eagles. Just like every team, the Falcons have some weaknesses that we can exploit, and I believe one of their weaknesses is that offensive line. They allowed 4 sacks in week 1 and 3 sacks in week 2. I hope Kamoko can play this week. He was the top-rated edge rusher of week 1, and if he plays like that here in week 3, then that can really disrupt their passing game, especially the way Danico Autry has been playing as well. I can't imagine Kamoko Touré's injury being all that severe. He didn't show any signs of injury in the game, so I feel like he'll be back soon if he's not back this week. It also sounds like Jabal Sheard might possibly be returning soon. If he returns this week, that'll be cool, but I believe he'll probably return next week. Pierre Desir did suffer an injury in the win over the Titans. I don't know how severe it is, but it looks like he's going to miss a couple games. Speaking of that, we have a variety of defensive backs that can replace him. They might not be as good as he is, but we have pretty good depth in the defensive back area, and I have faith that our secondary can still play at the level they are now. It also looked like that Darius Leonard was in the concussion protocol. I don't know if he has a concussion. I don't know if he's hurt. I don't know if he's feeling symptoms of a concussion, but I really hope that he doesn't have a concussion. If he does, we have a depth in linebackers as well that might fill the hole if he does have to miss a game or two. No one can win games when your defense gets hurt all the time. I think that's the reason why Chris Ballard put emphasis on the secondary and linebackers in the draft and in the offseason just to fill that hole just in case we do have defensive players that get hurt. Before we talk about the keys of the game this week, there's an offensive play that I think deserves some attention. It didn't Didn't get a lot of yards, but it showed a lot of athleticism from a big man. It was the play Eric Ebron caught a ball and hurdled a defensive player. He's 6'4", 245 pounds. Now, I give you that 246 pounds is an average weight for an NBA player, and he has all the ability to probably be an NBA player. But I just thought that was a very athletic play, a very talented play from a very talented football player. And he deserves credit for it. He deserves attention for it. Like I said, this Sunday is our home opener against the Atlanta Falcons. Their offensive line has allowed 7 sacks in the past 2 weeks, so hopefully we can get to the quarterback time and time again. They have a very strong passing game. If we can limit their passing game, then we can for sure win this game. Matt Ryan is probably one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the league today. Matt Ryan is currently 11th all-time in passing yards and currently tied for 11th in all-time touchdowns. This Sunday, he can easily pass John Elway with 1 touchdown. Matt Ryan is currently 7th in the league in passing yards and 4th in the league in passing touchdowns. Those are outstanding stats right there, but he's also leading the league in interceptions. So if we force him to make some passes, then we might be able to pick it off. Last week, Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley had over 100 yards receiving. If we can contain those guys and make Matt Ryan pass it to somebody else, then it's going to be a tough game for Atlanta to overcome. Those two are for sure their best receivers on the team, but they also like to use Austin Hooper too. I would keep an eye on him as well. The past 2 weeks they haven't had much of a running game, so I think if we can make them run the ball, if we can shut down Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley and make them run the ball, then we should be able to win the game. I'm not trying to take away the talent of Devontae Freeman because he can impact the game anytime, but their running game is not strong. So get to the quarterback, force Matt Ryan to make bad decisions that he's awfully good at, and make him run the ball. And that's how we can defensively win the game. Offensively, I really think we can beat this team on the ground. I mean, the Vikings only had 98 passing yards in week 1. And right now, currently, Marlon Mack is 3rd in the league in rushing yards after week 2. And last week, we got to see a little bit of Jordan Wilkins, and he had flashes of greatness. And who knows, he might not be playing a whole lot this week. It might be Hines. It might be Jonathan Williams. We don't know yet. But I feel like if we split the carries between 2 of the running backs, or even 3 of the running backs, then it's going to be hard for defensive teams to game plan against us because they don't know who we're going to use. But we also have Nyheim Hines, who's really good at catching the ball in the open field. But we still haven't used him a whole lot in the passing game. I think they really want to use him, but they're trying to catch teams off guard, so they're not using him as much right now. And I also feel this past week they did open up the playbook. They just didn't open it up a lot, probably because they're trying to give Jacoby more and more confidence going forward. So in the next few games, I can see them opening up that playbook wide where there will be more passing plays. Last week, Atlanta had 2 interceptions. They didn't have any in week 1. However, they didn't pass the ball a lot in week 1. That's a big reason why I think we need to pay attention to that running game because their run defense is not the best. But again, the Falcons secondary let Nelson Aguilar have over 100 yards and Zach Ertz have over 70. Ultimately, I don't know how good their secondary is, but I do know that they don't have much of a running defense. So I'm thinking that Marlon Mack may have a huge game this Sunday, but if their secondary isn't the greatest, then T.Y. Hilton could possibly have a big game as well. I think if they open up the passing plays a little more, then Deon Cain can be a key factor if they use it correctly. The past 2 weeks, they haven't used the tight ends a whole lot, and I really think they need to utilize that position. We have a very strong tight end group, just like we have a pretty strong receiver group and running group. This entire offense is loaded with talented players that don't get recognized a whole lot. This past offseason, there was fans that was wanting Le'Veon Bell. He honestly wouldn't have been a bad pickup, but Marlon Mack is just as good. There's fans that were wanting Antonio Brown, but now there's probably a lot of fans that don't now. Devin Funchess would have been just as good, but he got hurt, and now we got other receivers that haven't really got to show a whole lot that are still good. Just because these players have a huge name and their name is in the media doesn't mean we should go and get them. There's fans that are wanting Jalen Ramsay because he requested a trade trade. But the thing is, he requested a trade because he's not getting the money he's wanting, and he's already getting a lot of money. He causes locker room problems. Haven't you seen the way Jacksonville plays? They get kicked out of games, they get suspended, and you're going to want this guy to come into our locker room and defect us? This is the same guy that disrespected Andrew Luck last season. It's just like Minkah Fitzpatrick. He was crying because his team got blown out in week 1 and he doesn't think that his team's all that great. So he's like, let me get traded. So they traded him to the Steelers, and guess what? The Steelers are not going to have that great of a season either because their quarterback is out for the season. There was a fan that posted on Facebook asking if it would be a great idea if we signed Eli Manning. Eli Manning, right after we already signed Brian Hoyer for 3 years, and we still have Chad Kelly, who is younger than Eli Manning. Yes, we all get it. Eli Manning is Peyton Manning's brother, but that's not a good reason to want to sign him. Big names that it's always in the media, it means absolutely nothing. So chill out. That'll do it for this week. So please like, subscribe, comment, and share. And give me your suggestions and ideas of how to make the show better and how to keep your attention on this podcast better than everyone else's. Thank you for listening. See you next time.